Look at these two troublemakers.
Hey, Johnny, how are you?
Wicked car, is that new?
Yeah, it's a Sonata. Let me pack it.
Oh, you're not fitting your car in there.
Chris, stop being a smarty pants, all right? Look who's got Smart Pack.
Smart pack?
Just hit the clicker, car packs itself.
It's smart.
It's wicked smart, and I can pack it anywhere.
How about Dorchester?
Packed it.
Foxborough.
Packed it.
The harbor?
Are you kidding me? I packed it and then unpacked it.
You unparked it?
Kid.
Game changer.
That Sonata ain't got no driver.
That's all right. He's got smart pack.
Hey, you can back there.
He's got smart pack!
The Trunk Monkey Theft Retrieval System. Because sometimes getting your car back is simply not enough. Another revolutionary idea you'll only find at Suburban Auto Group, pending approval by Department of Agriculture.
Well, selling the car is just like fishing, Wilbur. You bait the hook, you throw it out, and then you reel them in real slow. You ask them questions about their family, what they do. You act like you're interested. And once you get their trust, kabowie! You just sold a car!
Tired of being badgered? Then come to Johnson Kia of Durham. Great deals, great service, no badgers.
Hey everyone, welcome to our very first webinar series with Effectv. My name is Anne-Marie Johnson. I'm the Director of Partner Relationships with ASOTU. So today we're going to be talking about just different ways and strategies that top dealers are using presently to, build community, connect with the market, expand their market share. And we've got a couple of guests with us today. So we've got Anthony Giangoli. He is the Director of Automotive at Effectv. And we have Miles Chilcott, who is the General Sales Manager at Tracy Chevy Cadillac. So we're going to have a lot of fun. And again, thank you to Effectv for sponsoring this with us. And I'm going to flip it over to Paul and Kyle.
Hey there, everybody. It's good to see you. It's good to be with you. That transition almost makes it seem like we're not live.
We are live. This is us. We're doing this in time. No pre-recorded sessions.
No stunt doubles either.
It's perfect. That's perfect. Oh man, Paul, I'm excited to talk a little bit about video. Just a
close
couple
to our hearts, honestly.
Yeah,
video is near and dear. If you know us, you know that we believe in the power of video in general. Its ability to connect with people more than other mediums. And so this is kind of like a great ground ball for us first time out on the webinar series, because I feel like we're on our home turf.
Yeah. Well, okay. So a couple of housekeeping notes, just because I'm like the operational guy. Paul and I are going to be chatting just a little bit, giving a little bit of background. Then we'll bring in Anthony and Miles in just a little bit. Got a little bit of back and forth, some commentary from what they're seeing on the ground. Miles is at a store and seeing how video is affecting his store's capacity to win. So we'll get into that. At the end, we're actually going to have a Q&A. So I know if you registered, you got the opportunity to ask a question, but there may be questions that you have along the way as we go. Feel free to jump in the chat right there and on Zoom, and you can ask those questions live. And then we've got a team that's kind of checking those out and going to curate a few of those to the end. If nobody asks questions, we're just going to sit here and stare at you for 15 minutes. No, that's not going to happen. We've actually got a couple of those questions that were asked prior that we can do as well. But we'd love to get your live feedback questions as we kind of walk through some of the content today. If you have to step away, we know calls happen. Everyone's going to get the recording when this is done. So don't worry about, if for some reason you're like, man, I did not catch that one sentence, I had to write that down, write down the time and then come back to it. It'll be a good thing for you as you move forward. But yeah, let's jump into it. I think we just kind of want to take a little walk down memory lane. I think Paul's gonna walk.
Yeah,
us
let's do
through
that. So, if you can remember back far enough pre-pandemic, really in automotive, kind of the last line in the sand, or the last benchmark that a lot of people remember, is the NADA show in 2020, right? And that happened, and then like that was the beginning. But prior to that, the conversation around OTV, CTV was really ramping up in a significant way, and really that was driven by brand marketers leveraging the mediums to start to talk about the other value propositions around doing business with their dealership more than price and payment. They were using it for price and payment, but you just saw this resurgence of brand marketers just using video to just build affinity, talk about company culture. And what we saw is they were gaining market share at the time. People that were taking a brand first strategy actually were showing greater organic traffic on their website. They were just showing frankly, better retention in their hiring because they were hiring better people. And that was like a lot of top of funnel activity with video content and brand building in general. And at the bottom of the funnel, so you think like the little lead goes in the top and it goes in the funnel and it comes out the bottom. That was where there was just incredibly fierce competition for those very, very, very bottom of the funnel shoppers, right?
So yeah, we saw like record growth in digital spends through like 2015 to 2019, and people were just all about how to find attribution for their I remember like it was kind of a joke. It was like attribution was the new keyword. Everybody wanted to know, did $1 sell a car, right? And so some of this like OTT and CTV video placements were kind of the new ability to at least see a little bit more about data and how things were impacting website visits and showroom visits and even sales down to that. And we're even getting more dialed in with that. But then what happened was once we had all this new movement, a little bit, much more movement toward brand and creative movement to both digital and linear ecosystems. When we talk linear, we mean like your traditional broadcast or cable placements for video, as well as things like YouTube and OTT and any connected TV. But what happened was we hit the pandemic and everyone went skirt. And there was it was almost like 50-50. It was like half the crowd was like pull all the marketing. The other half of the crowd was like lean in. And I remember because I was at a dealership group at that point, and everyone was kind of scrambling going, what do we do with our ad dollars? How do we place them? What do we put them in? And then like we saw this resurgence of ad dollars because we recognized there was pent up demand. People started adding back ad dollars, but because the conversation was so much around digital, people started to forget that this like brand play was extremely important. Mm-hmm. And then another line in the sand happened, and all of a sudden inventory drops out. And in 2021, we all of a sudden see this like massive inventory drop where we've got chip shortages and inability to deliver inventory. And people were wondering, what do we do to communicate what we do? Because you couldn't talk about price, you couldn't talk about payment, you couldn't talk about incentives. And so everyone turned to brand first marketing and service and retention loyalty marketing. And that's when we saw a lot of people going and saying, hey, look, that's the way to market. That's the way to get your name out there and the word out there, because it was literally the only way.
Yeah, it was the only thing to talk about. How many commercials did we see that started with "in these unprecedented times"?
Yes, yeah. This is what we're doing. It was all about service.
Yeah,
right.
It was. Yeah, it was. And during that time period, like people started talking about brand, and then, like you said, the inventory crunch hit, and then all of a sudden, people just started showing up and buying cars because if you had a car that they wanted, they did the work to find it. And there was no negotiation, and thus begun the recent era that we're just really coming out of, but the era of, well, if you don't buy it, the next person's going to buy it, right? And we got into all the stuff about MSRP, but the point of that is that the need to market individual vehicles in that way had really like dried up completely. And so people got in our opinion, it's easy to lean back and think that what's happening right now is all that it's going to be, right? And you lean back on the spend, and you lean back on talking about brand, because like why do I need to?
Why do you need to? We saw a lot of pulled back marketing budgets, especially this summer when profits were at an all-time high and everybody was just able to kind of rest on, if you have it, it's kind of like the if you build it they will come mentality. And so brand communication stops, even price product, literally communications almost grinded to a halt, not completely, but marketing dollars started to pull away.
Yeah. So, I mean, so that's a little walk down, like what we were doing pre-pandemic, if you can remember that, what we have, from the pandemic till now, kind of what's been going on. And now what we're seeing is our incentives and inventory starting to come back. And as we talk to dealers all over the country, we're hearing people say things like, we're hearing more objections on the sales floor than we've heard in years. Actually, I have salespeople that have started post-pandemic that have never actually had to sell a car. Right. So now this whole ecosystem is changing, and we're hearing dealers come back and saying, you know what, we're realizing that we underspent on marketing and we really need to get started with something.
Yep.
Now that's great. We're big proponents of getting back in and understanding that it's going to take a little time to break the wheels free, and it takes some time and investment to actually do that. And also to realize that the dealers who have been brand marketing the whole time now have a greater market share and advantage because they own some space in everybody's head. So, that's kind of one of the premises of this whole how to unsuck your video strategy. It's like, we know that there are people in all different areas of that transition right now. And our goal is to like have you spend the best dollars going into 2023. So wherever you're at, whether you've been spending the whole time, you can make it more efficient and better. Or if you realize you need to start getting going again, that you're just going to spend the money in the right places with the right strategic mindset, so that you can not waste money and get that market share going.
Yeah, I would say that one of the things, especially that we're seeing right now, kind of before we get to the strategy portion, and we promise this all kind of relates back to a quality video strategy that isn't just paid, it's organic, it's across multiple mediums, it's all of that, is that what people are kind of realizing now is, and what always happens is, whenever we change marketing mediums, spend, capacity, the where we're going to market, who we're communicating with, whenever we pull back on that or shift the mode of communication, getting back to the same mode of communication or to something that we were doing in the past, it takes a lot longer to kind of uptick that. And so, the calls that we're getting is, hey, I've got aged inventory again. Hey, I'm actually getting new car inventory. Had a conversation with a dealer the other day. Rogues, which were almost impossible to find 5 months ago, now have rebates on them again.
Wow.
So how do we talk about that? How do we have that communication, but still lean into a brand first mentality and keep an always on mentality? That's kind of the strategies that we want to walk through here over the next few minutes and talk about, like, how do you have that strategy, how to communicate that strategy, both to like key stakeholders, whether you're on the partner side or in the dealership side, and what types of results do we see that potentially producing over the next, really, you're looking at like a 2 to 4 year timeline. A lot of times we just look at these 30-day timelines, and anything that's good and has staying power has a lot longer horizon than what are we going to do to be good to win in December. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we all kind of know that as humans intuitively. Right. I think it's kind of wired through just about every area of life. If you want long-term results, right, it doesn't happen because you did one thing. It's because you did a lot of little things disciplined for an extended period of time. And then the good part about that is, and we'll see that in some of the data we look at in a moment, the good part about that is when you do that investment, the fall off also, if you stop or you have to stop spending or something changes or you have something go on in your store, when you do that, those behaviors, if there is an issue or shakeup or something like that, it also doesn't drop off a cliff because you did the conditioning work, right? If you're eating right and you're healthy and you're exercising and you spend 2 years getting super fit, right? You can have a couple pizzas and some cannoli, right?
But I love a good cannoli. We had some cannoli in Philly.
We did. That was actually probably one of the best cannoli I ever had. So our friends at Effectv have really supplied us with some great data that we're going to talk about. The first slides are really talking about the value of multi-screen. So
And just as a note, before we kind of get into this, we've kind of got, for Paul and I, and when we're coaching with dealers or coaching with anyone that's putting out any video or media spend, this concept of like being in multiple places, the concept of always being on and never kind of like halting the communication, as well as the type of creative that we see performing best. And we just asked Effectv, like, hey, based on those kind of qualifications, the things that we see, is there data to support? Like, does it actually have an end result of increased sales, increased market share? So that's what we're going to look at.
So the first slide that you see up here, right, when you're talking about brand story and creative message, brand recognition by people who are intending to buy, right, is twice what it is twice in multi-screen digital than it is on traditional TV. That means when you make creative that's about your brand, who you are, what you do, why you do what you do, it's going to be remembered twice as often. What's the next? Here, pop the next slide up here as well.
Yeah, and so this is, and that's looking at and this is all looking at when you are doing things like traditional or linear type of TV, as well as streaming platforms. And that's streaming platforms, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, as well as OTT and CTV, marrying those and not just going with a digital first mentality. And it's interesting because what the proving point here is that there's a higher brand recall when TV is a part of that mix, and it's not just a digital ecosystem. You just think about practically, just anecdotally, what do you remember when you're scrolling, through a billion social posts, right? And then what do you remember when you're sitting down, your football game, you're watching your favorite TV show, something that is larger screen, and so that higher brand recall. The next slide.
Wait, hold on. Keep this. Go back for just 1 second. I think you're on, like what you just said, Kyle, has to do, if we could just back up and think about mindset when a shopper or a viewer is taking a behavior, looking at a screen. Your mindset, like for instance, your mindset when you log into Pinterest is that you're going to buy something, you're going to renovate something, you're looking for ideas to have people over or cook a meal, and you're going to go buy ingredients, right? It's a very different mindset than when you flip open TikTok, where you're looking for those just nuggets of entertainment. Same thing is true here. When you are on a big screen or multi-screen digital, right? Someone sat down to watch a long form program in some way, shape, or form. So you're actually focused versus just being advertised to and just flipping through. You're in the mindset, like when you're just scrolling, you're in the mindset of quickly dismissing, which makes so much sense when you look at this slide, and that 7 times more people are going to remember. They're going to remember your brand and remember it because their mind is just clicked into like, I'm paying attention mode. So that, I think that's such an important one. And I just don't want people to miss that.
Yeah. And here's the other piece, and this is the next slide, is that the other crazy point of this is it's not just that people are able to recall, it's actually that they're pushed more into purchase intent from having those multiple platforms, looking at traditional and streaming, when you're looking at the types of TV that they're watching. So it's interesting because when you look at going multi-screen and having not just your digital ecosystem, but also a TV style ecosystem, you're going to increase people's purchase intent and their desire to actually do business with you, which is really the end goal. And so thinking about like, what do I want people to come away with the type of advertising that I'm doing? It allows people to go, yes, I actually want to do business with someone when I have that higher brand recall. For us, it's like, hey, being everywhere a little bit is much better than being one place a lot. I think about like, think about some of the brands that you see on a regular basis that you're like, man, I run into them everywhere I'm at. I'm going to use this a couple times, but you think about Coca-Cola. You're like, why does Coca-Cola need to continue to advertise? Right? It's Coke, for goodness sakes, right? But you see them on billboards and TV and the end cap at the grocery store,
movies,
and the movies even, right? Well, it's because as people kind of see you in different environments with different level of attention, it allows you to attract not just recall, but also purchase intent. The next one, a little bit on the always on mentality. This is one that is really interesting to me. And I actually noticed I did some studies back when I was still in the dealership world, is that market share gained or loss based on the time on running ads, and especially while on air and TV, is it's a disparate change, right? So this was a study that Effectv did in Jackson, Mississippi, and the look was at two different dealers in the same DMA, and the change in market share when as you can see, that blue line, dealer B went off air and continued to be off air. What's crazy to me, and Paul and I were talking about this once we saw this data, is that it's not like they dropped that dealer B dropped off right away.
Yeah.
The brand recall was still high enough because they had been running on this platform. Well, now, then you look a year and a half later after they dropped off in their on-air runs, that there was a 5% drop in share of sales in that same DMA in the same market.
And you look at the delta between the one that turned it on and the one that turned it off, right? That goes back to what the original point that we started talking about. The dealers who have been leaning in on this, right, have been pulling away. And so if you haven't been investing, if you haven't been thinking this way, like understand, like that blue line there, if that is you, it's like, pay attention, lean in, right?
Yep.
Make better creative, right? Lean in, turn the strategy on. Like that's, you know how it is. It's an ebb and a flow. But I think, yeah, like you just brought up, Kyle, like another great point is the fact that like when you do this type of regular brand marketing, it doesn't just drop off. Imagine if this was a chart of like, SEO spend, right? The second the budget's gone, that sucker drops to zero, right? No value.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Well, okay. So, and this is near and dear to your heart, Paul. So I'll let you kind of talk about it, but everyone's always asking like, what do I do? What do I run? How do I get, like, what creative is going to ring the bell for me? And I think that's like, it's a question that can be answered somewhat by data.
So yeah, throw the next slide up. The one that has the three columns up. Do we have that? Here we go. Yeah, there you go. So look, brand marketing that focuses on creative versus price and payment is a winning strategy when it comes to OTV, CTV. People don't want prices. They don't want payments. This stuff shows it, right? Because you need to differentiate the brand. Whether, honestly, the in-market later stuff, it doesn't surprise me. You look to the far right of the chart that you see brand ads are the most important. These are the shoppers that are not in the market now, right? But there's going to become a time later when they're going to be like, oh, I think I need a car. Where should I go? Brand creative is the only thing that actually works on them because price payment is completely irrelevant, right? Like think about it. When you're shopping for a TV, there's like this intense push for like a week where you look at every circular and you know every spec and you know the refresh rates and the contrast ratios. And then any other time you could care less, right? It's the same thing with a car shopper, right? And then you can see as it moves across the branding ad in market soon, they know they're getting close, still is the preferred ad type. And then when you move to in-market, active shoppers trying to buy a car, it's still not a price and payment ad. It's a hybrid ad. It's an ad that still implements a measure of brand connection and creative, not just, like buy, incentive. So like if anything, let's like sticks in your brain a little bit. If that can just help you hesitate a little bit when you want to run that type of ad on OTT or CTV, hopefully this will
TV, it doesn't matter. Yeah,
it really does. Right?
It doesn't matter. It's just when the data proves out that a brand first strategy with some level of hybrid, where like when we say transaction or hybrid, it's like actually making a hard ask and not just saying like this is the best place to do business. It's going, hey, this is the time to buy based on like a price or a payment or something like that, a hard hook at the end of an ad. Doing too much of that really is not the way that consumers are prepared to shop or engage.
Mm-hmm.
You just think about the best commercials out there. They're really saying, align with me. We're the best people to do business with, for you based on your purchase intent, your style of wanting to do business and acquiring that customer. Actually, what happens is you see a longer turn on retention as well. So you see that customer back to service because they're aligning with brand and not just transaction, price, or product.
All right, one more slide here as we kind of wrapping up this segment and getting close. So people in market for a vehicle respond more positively to creative messages. And I'm not talking about creative messages. Let's make the price of the car bigger, right? I'm talking about creative that talk about a feeling.
We put our logo on there though, Paul.
Make the logo bigger, Kyle. So look at this. 46% find those stores and those businesses more likable in general. An increased consideration, plus 58%, and just saying like, yeah, I would consider buying a car there because they saw something creative versus something that is more price payment, and a 10% bump in recall as well. So, I think, again, these things are just to make the case that if we're trying to help you unsuck your video strategy for 2023, right, these general broad principles, before you're spending the money to like run ads, want to make sure you're making the right things for the right reasons, so that you get all the value and all the mileage when you do.
Awesome. You know what? I think they've heard enough from us, Paul.
I think so.
Well, let's do this. We'll bring in now Anthony Gingoli and Miles Chilcott. Excited to have them on the show and on the webinar today to dig into some practitioners in the market.
Effectv can help your business get the right ad in front of the right audience at the right time. Effectv. Find your unique audience.
We promise. Again, that wasn't pre-recorded. That was pre-recorded. This isn't pre-recorded. We're bringing in, we've got Anthony Gingoli, the Director of Automotive with Effectv, and Miles Chilcott, GSM at Tracy Chevy Cadillac. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. All right, so Anthony, we're gonna leave you out to dry because everybody always wants to hear from the dealer first. That's just the way it is. Welcome to the automotive industry. Miles, I'd love to get just kind of your take on exactly what you all are doing right now in the market, running with video, and how you're utilizing it to allow your brand to live in the ecosystem and the community that you're a part of.
Well, it's funny, the lead-in that you had to the show with all the historical videos was actually kind of what I wanted when I set out to get stuff on the air. And that was just to create something that people saw, something that they'd remember, and when they were in market for a vehicle to take back to head. And what I did was go out and show the town. We're in the town, and we're in a kind of like town, so we want to take the show through Plymouth and let everyone know that we're here. And that's kind of the core of our videos, for different places in the town.
Okay.
Sorry, you're on a delay. Just realized that. Yeah. Awesome. So what you've done is, when you're thinking of your video ad strategy, you're thinking like, how do I integrate what we're doing with the community, saying, hey, look, all of our creative is going to lean into community, how we're a part of the community, why it's important to be a part of the community. I want you to kind of talk us through, like, what's the ideation phase on saying, hey, look, we need to communicate something new. We need to be a part of the community. How does that work with your team? Are you, working with the ad platform and your creative team and yourself? Like, how are you kind of ideating the next thing that allows you to be in market from a video perspective?
Well, the storyboards are actually kind of unique. There's me and the general manager, and then our creative guy. And the creative guy really comes up with a base outline, and then we'll just kind of, laugh and spitball and create, find different parts in the town that we think are gonna, really resonate with someone, and we laugh, and probably some of the stuff will get us canceled somewhere, and then the other stuff we bring in and kind of work it from there. He'll come up with a couple different edits for it, and then we're live. Then we throw it to Effectv, and they get it on.
What are the high level things? Like, give us a little bit of an insight. Like, when you're thinking, like, what type of thing do we want to create, right? Once you get into the storyboarding, right, you're getting down to the dirt a little bit, and you're starting to come up with concepts and locations and things like that. But like, what are the driving principles when you're saying we're going to make some video content? What is the mindset you usually head in with?
the mindset is just to be someone else in the town. We're just regular people here in the town. We live here just like everyone else. Being a car salesman doesn't make us any more or less of a human being. We're right here with it, and I think that shows in our ads. If you look at our videos, there's no secret sauce to them.
Yeah, I think we're gonna watch one here. I'm not exactly sure when, but if you're watching live stream, you're gonna get to see an ad. So
yeah, let's go ahead and roll that, and then maybe we can chat about it a little. Yeah,
great. All right, so I felt good. I felt I could smell some campfire during that whole thing. Tell me about the synthesis of like where that idea came from, why you executed it that way, and kind of what the response was to it when you run it.
Well, in Plymouth, up in New England, everything is based around summer and winter, and the different seasons. So the town forest is the largest part of the town. Most of the town is the state forest. So we wanted to show the joys of family out in the forest, and the entryway to the forest is the large drive-in there, and then they get to the site and they have a good time.
So you're saying that there's a lot of familiarity when people that are in the area see that video. They're like, I've been there. I know exactly what that is, right? This is bringing up feelings of kind of like present nostalgia, I guess I would call it.
Yeah, exactly. Present nostalgia. That's a good one. Yeah.
He's like, I'll take it.
It just came out that way.
I love it. Yeah. No, and I think it's great because what it does is it like when you look at it, you see that there's a vehicle there, and I'm guessing, if I had to guess, there's some familiarity with even like your license plate being in the shot every once in a while. It's kind of like, hey, this is what people do. We just happen to be a part of the life and the ecosystem of our area. So I love that ad. It's awesome. Anthony, I'd love to ask you, coming from Comcast, and you've seen that data and from Effectv, when you look at like the large swath of people running in multiple different places across the country and in larger metros, minor metros, and you get to see this like large arena of automotive advertising, where are you kind of seeing the wins when it comes to being on air or the types of creative that are being run right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think what Miles has done is kind of tapped into something. He's made his brand very relatable, not just to people in general, but people that live in his backyard and people that are going to do business with him. And I think that is really the value of it. I can't sit here and tell you one way to do anything, because it really depends on the brand you have in the marketplace, what you're trying to convey, who your customers are, and then telling the story around that customer. What makes that ad powerful is they've done all those things, and they've created a relatable brand for people to come in and say, that's where I want to go do business. I feel comfortable walking in there. They're in my backyard. They understand how I live my life, and that's a place where I want to go and learn from. So I think that is really it. I get asked that question a lot, and I can't give you a perfect answer. You really have to sit down and understand and be thoughtful about, what does your dealership mean to the community, and what story do you want to tell? And those are the people over the last 2 years. They're the stories we've started to see on air far more than price payment.
Yeah. So I think me a little bit to know that I'm the data nerd. I'm the guy that's like, let's tie all the guys together, figure it all out. And one of the typical kind of conversations when it comes to any video, I don't care if it's traditional broadcast TV all the way to OTT, even to YouTube, it doesn't matter. People are continuing to ask the question that everyone was trying to say, like, hey, Google, Facebook, things like that are going to be able to draw a straight line from marketing dollars to direct ROI, whether that be an RO or a sale. and also just that the types of audience strategies that are alongside of that. And I know that it's not just Effectv, but other partners that allow for video ad placement or ad placement are expanding into data ecosystems. Can you talk a little bit about what's available now on the front end from an audience perspective, and then also on the back end from a data or an ROI proving point in especially video right now?
Sure, that's probably a whole other call, but to sort of summarize it is that there we have tremendous audience data, so we understand what our viewers are watching, what our households are watching, and we have a ton of third-party data we layer on top of that, so that we can define auto intenders in a very specific way. We can do it in your geography, we can do it down to zip code. So that's the front end side of it. We can identify who's in market, where they are, and accurately deliver an ad to them across all of these screens, no matter how they watch television. So that's the key part there. Then on the back end is kind of where we have a whole slew of opportunity there in terms of how we're measuring. We're looking at ad exposure down to the household and what impact that made on sales. We're looking at sales directly in a dealer's backyard up to the minute sales that we're using to go in and consult with them. So we're measuring some attribution, and we're really just taking a look at all of these different variations. We have this slew of data that we're playing with to understand. One example is we went back and measured campaigns from Stellantis dealers in a market, measured the ones that were buying multi-screen versus the ones that weren't. And then we could match that back to ad exposure, so we could see which households bought cars, who was exposed to an ad, and the dealers that bought multi-screen were performed better than the ones that didn't. So I think that there's a lot in that question in terms of what we can do, but we're really trying to scratch the surface to give dealers all the opportunity to measure their campaigns however they want to, and make good decisions based on what's available to them.
You know, there's just been a lot of transition in your halls over the last several years, right? A rebrand, name change, all that stuff. People might not think of Effectv as a multi-screen provider. My question would be like, why should they?
Yeah, because we bring it all together. There's a lot of places to go buy OTT and see TV and all those things. We bring all of linear and all of streaming together in a way and with scale that no one else can. And that really comes from over the last 2 years, there's some trends that have happened that have evolved some things. We see streaming viewership growing. It's up 16% year over year. But 70% of that, 70% of viewing is still happening on linear traditional television. There are still a ton of people watching TV despite all the narrative. But 89% of that streaming and linear is happening on a big screen. So people are still in that environment. They're still sitting there, and we can bring that at scale. We can bring the data on top of it. And then we go out and we sit with people like Miles, and we talk to them on a day-to-day basis about what's happening in their backyard, what's important, how are sales going, and we try to bring some of that locality to everything to help them make better decisions in their marketing strategy.
Miles. Oh, go ahead, Kyle.
Well, I think it's interesting because, when I think of, the narrative for the last, let's call it 12 years since 2010 has been everybody's cutting the cord, right? And like for us in our house, we haven't like quote unquote cut the cord from cable or a platform like that. But what's interesting is probably 75% of the TV is, so anecdotally in our house, I'm a millennial. I have young kids. I kind of fit the like profile of every white paper in the world right now. But what's interesting about that is even though we are watching a lot of TV on alternate platforms, we're still watching it on our larger devices, right? We're still watching our cord cutting platforms on those larger devices. And that's when we talk about like connected TV or OTT or anything that is not linear, that's still happening on those larger devices. So I think, whether I'm watching a sports game or the nightly show, or I'm watching something on demand or in connected TV or on an OTT streaming type platform, I'm still doing it through a device that's tied into my larger screen. And that's happening throughout my household on a daily basis. So, that's just like anecdotally. And I think that's happening. What you're saying is that's happening from a lot of people. It's not just, that cord cutting means watching everything on your iPhone. Right?
No,
Yeah,
I'll second that.
go ahead.
Right. So I'm like the line between millennial and Gen X. I'm 43, and we're the same way. And I have 4 kids, all of which are watching non-network, non-cable programming on our big screen nonstop.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole cord cutting thing was something we just ultimately leaned into, and we're not beholden to just linear cable television anymore. We can deliver ads across video, no matter what platform you're watching on. It doesn't even need to be a Comcast household. So we've leaned into that, and that's the breadth of what we can do. It's the scale of getting whatever type of viewer you are, we can deliver that back to any dealer based on the needs of their local market.
Miles, I was going to ask you before we got down that lane, heading into 2023, do you have some like content or videos in the hopper that you're planning on making or that you're going to lean in on?
Yeah, I had a couple. We had a couple local golf courses we were going to try to. I had a couple storyboards we were putting together, but yeah, similar thing, just different spots in town that we were going to just showcase. And we're Cadillac as well, so Cadillac has been pretty much fully renovated at this point. It's a pretty fresh lineup, so just showing off a little bit more of the product. It's good to show off the new product in the video as well. I mean, obviously we're a car dealership, and it's still our job to show cars. So
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of times people can be like, oh, Paul and Kyle are out here just telling people to not talk about cars anymore. And that's not it at all. That's not it at all. So I appreciate you saying
real life. Just tie it together with real life, please.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, we're not here to sell you right now. I just want to show you the car and show you that way here. And then
well, it's like any great salesperson, right? You're connecting the dots with, like, every great realtor asks the same thing when you go show someone a house. Can you imagine yourself cooking in this kitchen? Right. And then it just puts people in the mindset of like, oh, could I? And maybe it's a no, right? But when you're showing the car right, can you imagine yourself going camping in this car? Right. You did a great job of that with the ad that we watched. Right. And that's basically, ask that question. Let people know that you understand the uses of the car, get them in the ether a little bit, and have them start to put the pieces together, and they'll find their way to your store, right? Because it's still going to be branded. They're going to understand, especially if you have the consistency to it. So I love that. Show them the car still.
There you go. All right. Well, we want to move to just a little bit of time. We've got about 15 minutes left and want to be honoring of the time. We want to add, roll to a couple of bit of audience questions here. So if you haven't asked questions, you do have questions, make sure and pop those in. If we can't get to them on the webinar today, we will make sure that if we can answer them, that what we may do is answer those through a circulated email, or maybe we'll answer them directly to you. So we're going to throw up the first question right now. And that first question is going to be, why is it important for dealers to plan out a strategy for advertising for 2023 in advance? I'd like to, maybe we'll throw that to Miles real quick. Like, what is how do you plan as you go into a new year, as you think about an entire year, and then also knowing that there'll be shifts in the market? What does it look like to plan for you, not just a creative strategy, but an ad strategy into a new year?
Oh, well, I mean, based on last year,
you're like, I don't even know.
Planning an ad strategy really starts at your beginning of the year forecast, and forecasting your gross and units per month and everything else. And obviously last year was kind of a roller coaster of inventory and no inventory, and rebates and no rebates and everything else. So, to fit the ad budget into there is, a challenge to say the least. But, to circle back to the, why we're here is, just to brand, to keep people thinking of us. And, the video portion of that isn't really going away. It's good to stay out there. And, like you're talking about the multi-platforms, it's important for the guys at Effectv and all the other reps out there just to show you the difference between linear and multi-platform. And it's good to be on both of them, whatever you're doing. If you're, laying in bed at night watching TV, what are you actually watching? Are you watching an OTT ad, or are you watching a linear ad? So, it's good that we have that, just a video that shows that we're still here.
Yo, but to back up
2023.
to like kind of take a swing at that question as well, I would add, when you're making good content, right? And good content is where you're going to get the efficient use out of your dollars. The value in the planning is that you can actually concept and produce the good content in time for your ad spend, because the hard thing to do is when you don't have that time and you're like, we need to start spending, right? Because we need to get something up. It's just going to be less efficient because you didn't have the time to actually make the good content. So you have to put maybe less than ideal content up to get something going. So I would throw in there that when you're thinking in the minds of creative video content that makes the strategy really fire, planning that in advance. So you can even, I mean, I would suggest, even a quarterly production schedule for something like this. So think, how can I put something fresh up every quarter would be a great, place to get in the game. I mean, if you have to go 6 months, that's fine. But that quarterly is usually a good way to think about that. So planning the strategy, backing into the fact that you're going to need to create the content. It's not just like a PPC campaign where you're just going to turn it on and it's there, right? There's a little bit more of a runway necessary.
Well, and I would say, and I'll kind of answer this question in this way, is that there are multiple advantages to looking at a long term. And so when we think about non-video strategies, right? And I think that the benefit for a lot on this call, whether you're a dealer or a Comcast employee or an industry partner, is thinking about your ad strategy as a year-long plan and as a campaign. You start to figure out what your messaging looks like across ad platforms, because when they do tie together, we were talking earlier about how there's things like, we're seeing differences in inventory. We're seeing differences in incentives. We're hearing objections on the sales floor. Is when you're communicating a similar thing across platforms, whether that be a social ad or a pay-per-click ad or a campaign, when you start to communicate the same thing across platforms, what happens is the customers that start to align with your brand start to throw less objections, because they're not just focused on whether or not this specific thing meets my specific need and meets my specific payment. They're more focused on, do I align with this brand? Do I align with this dealership? Is this someone that I trust and want to do business with? And if they're seeing the same thing across the website, the pay-per-click ad, the social ad, you're hitting them in these multiple places, their desire to do business with you is going to be a lot higher. So thinking in a 2023 strategy plan, you start to come up with those cadences of communication that allow people to do business with you a lot easier.
All right. I think it's time to move to the next question.
Let's go.
What we got?
What percentage of budget would you, there we go. I'll do the questions. Here we go. What percentage of budget would you direct toward terrestrial, cable, streaming, and OTT? Let's do this. Before we get to the actual question, Anthony, can you just walk through what the difference between terrestrial, cable, streaming, and OTT may be as it comes to like ad placements and video?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what they meant by terrestrial in this standpoint. For us, cable is your traditional linear television that you sit down and watch in front of you, and streaming and OTT is anything that's delivered over the internet across your television screen or tablet or mobile. For us, this question really falls into, strictly talking about us, is probably about a 75-25 split. It's going to depend on your audience a little bit, based on your marketplace and your geography, who your audience is made up of. You may be in an older market where traditional television is a much bigger footprint, and we can help guide you through that in terms of what that viewership looks like. And you may lean more to an 85-15 strategy, or you could be in closer to a city where maybe the demographic is a little younger and you need a little more OTT to help reach the audiences you're trying to get to. So we sit down and advise you on that. But again, it really goes back to, there is no one clear-cut thing. But if I had to start somewhere, I'd start at 75-25 and then plan back from there.
Yeah, so terrestrial is going to be primarily like major broadcast networks. Typically, is going to be how that's going to be. So I know, like there's different capacity depending on your provider, whether or not you have to go direct to those, depending on the type of the type of TV that's being run or the type of placement that's being made. So that's more normally like your direct network buys, and then you have your cable buys, and then your streaming and OTT. So yeah, I think like what Anthony said is a great starting point. What I would add to that is that typically you're streaming OTT eyeballs, that the impressions are going to be you're just going to get a little bit more impressions for your dollar. But one of the things that I think is a misstep a lot of times when we think about advertising is we don't think about the difference between the like 3 layers of audience strategy. One layer would be a little bit broader of an audience strategy, understanding that there are in-market buyers that we don't know are in-market buyers with all of the data that we have in the world, that it is important to hit eyeballs no matter where they're at in the funnel, because you never know when they're going to drop into it or when they haven't exhibited buying signals in digital ecosystems. The next is going to be something that's like audience-based strategy. So this is something where people are exhibiting signs and signals in digital ecosystems similar to other intenders or purchasers. So that's like your second party and third party audience strategies. A lot of what Comcast and Effectv can provide based on set-top box data. And then there's first party data. And I think also like thinking about not just the medium, but also the audience strategy based on those mediums that can provide you is really important. And so just designing your digital spend around that. But I agree that if you are in those, that 75% is mainly because of the availability of the buy or the cost of the buy toward your cable or terrestrial buys, and then 25% in that streaming and OTT land. All right, let's hit another question.
Do it.
What percentages of ad strategies are devoted to dealer profit centers outside of new and used sales? Now,
I'm trying to remember the last time I saw a fixed ops ad.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Miles, what are you running any video that is dedicated to fixed ops, or is the majority of your like sale or your service and parts fixed ops type of stuff on other different ad mediums?
Well, I'm the general sales manager, so I would like
all of the He's like, we never do that.
Yeah.
No, we don't have any video ad for service. We do run a bunch of more direct mail for service, email campaigns. We did just start we just opened up a major commercial facility for more, medium duty stuff, bigger chassis. So we do have some video campaigns going out for service. But I guess that would be more multi-role. It's more both sides, sales and service. But when you're talking about commercial, it is more service oriented than sales.
For sure. Anthony, are you seeing people run things for other profit centers? Like, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I think what kind of happened is there was an inventory, and we would go in and talk to dealers, and they said, I don't want to advertise, I don't have any inventory. And the response would be, but you have customers, right? And those customers still want to come in and do business with you. There's an opportunity to acquire customers that could potentially buy new cars or used cars from you down the line. Mm-hmm. So how do we attract them now? So we saw an uptick in service ads because there was demand for it, and there was opportunity to bring in new customers into a dealership. And then set them up for what could happen down the line. So that's where this whole sort of idea of the funnel is. Bring them in no matter when they're ready to do some type of business with you, and prepare them to be a new or used customer down the line. So that's probably the biggest place we've seen. But I also think there's an opportunity for education around digital retailing and EV too, where we've started to see dealers want to take a lead in those positions and
for sure
and communicate that.
I would add to that. Kind of low-hanging fruit for any dealership that needs to ever hire people. recruiting type or company culture type content doesn't necessarily drive to any profit center, but it can also drive to all of them. So because people just make the association when people seem to be enjoying a great place to work, that when you go there, you're going to get great service and it's going to be a great experience. So although maybe it is featuring your technicians, right? If you have a great service department and people who love where they work and you make some video content around that, guess what? That translates into the sales department actually. And that also translates into whenever you're recruiting or hiring. So I would say if you ever want to like mix it up a little bit, and maybe you don't want to, make TV commercials about your fixed ops because you're booked out 3 weeks already. You know what I mean? That might actually help you get some more technicians. So it's just a little bit to kind of like mix it up a little as well. Not just seeing the car, but seeing the people in the store. I would suggest I've seen really great success with that. And I think just in general, people want to see things that make them feel good and see people having a good time for once, right? There's like a lot of negativity out there. There's a lot of bad stuff going on and people constantly telling like, hey, they're trying to mess your stuff up. No, they're trying to mess your stuff up, right? And that's a lot of the narrative that we see. So just showing that there's like a little bit of reprieve from that in your business and in your store, I think could actually go a long way for all of the things we're talking about.
Yeah, and I'm going to say this is that a lot of times the first thing that we run to and a lot of the questions that we got and not just these questions but some of the other questions were like, what's the advertising go to market strategy? How do we place budgets or place different ads? And the scary part that I see is that everyone thinks video is driven toward ad dollars alone. And what we really see in the highest performing dealerships and dealer groups is that there's a video strategy across organic and paid mediums that complement each other very, very well. And when that's done, actually, you start to see every profit center gaining from a competent video strategy. So things like brand first ads or YouTube research style videos or company culture videos within social media, organically and paid. When those all start to align and you have a competent campaign style strategy that touches all of the profit centers, they all start to gain because the overall lift of both brand recall, like we talked about on multiple screens, the intent to purchase narrative, as well as the just likability, congeniality of the overall ecosystem of the dealership. You say, okay, I saw that, but now I'm going to be able to be willing to do business with a company in this. So don't lose sight of that. Video has its power in not just ads, but also organic. And actually they are both strengthened by each other. That's, I think the narrative for me there. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a way to tell a story. No matter what you're doing, you're telling a story about your brand, and however way you can communicate that is valuable.
Awesome. Well, Miles, Anthony, thank you so much for being on with us today. To those who attended, we really appreciate it. From Paul and myself, we just thoroughly enjoy this. For us, you can reach out to us via LinkedIn, DM. We are the only Paul J. Daly and Kyle Mounts here on LinkedIn. Also, if you just have questions for the ASOTU crew or for Effectv and want to reach out, you can hit us at crew@asotu.com. That's CREU@asotu.com. We actually respond to those emails. CREW. What did I say? Did I miss
CREU, which is weird. It's like a French spelling, maybe.
That was that's the last name is Mount Sear. So, Miles, thanks so much for taking time out of your day. Anthony, appreciate it. We'll throw it to Anne Marie to wrap us up today.
I'm not Anne Marie.
No. There I am. Hey there. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today. We hope you learned a ton. Again, thank you again to Effectv for putting this on with us. Stay tuned. We are going to continue webinar series through 2023. And if there's anything I can ever help with, you can reach me at amj@asotu.com. Thanks again, everyone. And thanks, Effectv. Y'all have a great day.